sound. It conveys emotion. It tells a story. Let's hear all about it on this episode. Good day, whatever time of day it is you're listening. Welcome to the Save Your Dues Financial Podcast, a show all about sustainably building your entertainment career in and outside of Hollywood. I'm your host, Anthony Moormeal. You guys, I am so excited to be joined today by Richard Hamilton. Rich is one half of Dragonfly Audio Post, which is an award-winning sound design and mixing company that works on feature films, commercials, and everything in between. Rich, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
So, what's your story, Rich? Can you do a deeper dive for me?
So I originally hail from the city of Philadelphia. And my background is I went to college at Drexel and got a bachelor's in film, and have been working in the film industry as a sound mixer and sound designer since about 2014. And moved around a bunch and currently live in Austin, Texas.
Nice. Can you confirm for me, is Austin weird?
Yes, I can confirm it is weird. It's a lot. It's definitely changing and becoming less weird over time because of all the tech industry that is coming here. Things are getting a bit more square.
Well, that's a little sad, but I'm glad that in spite of that, the film and TV industry still endures over there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's actually recently in the last, ironically, considering what everybody's been through the last 2 years, it's actually been quite busy, which is good.
That is good. So how long was it post-graduation when you decided it's time to leave Philly?
I stayed in Philly for about a year and then moved to New York for about 4 years. So I had very little money, and I stayed at my aunt and uncle's house rent-free for a while I was like scouring Mandy and Craigslist for work in Brooklyn. And I was there for about a year while my cousin was at school. And then I finally got some money and saved up and rented a place in Ridgewood in Queens. And I was there for a couple years.
Nice. And when you were there, did you have a bunch of roommates or?
So I had a couple of my friends from Philly had moved up to New York at the time, and a few film school friends had made their way up there. So we decided to find a place together. So we were lucky in a sense because the place that we had was it was a house. It was your classic New York scenario where it was like a house that was clearly built for like a family of 4 to 6 people, but they crammed like maybe 16 people in it. And each quadrant of the house was like a 4-person apartment that they kind of reconverted. But we were lucky because we were on the first floor and we had the only 3-person apartment out of the 4. So we had a little bit more space than everybody else. It was kind of funny. It turned into like kind of a college reunion because then several other people from film school ended up living in that house for a couple years as well. People coming and going, but it was nice to see everybody under one roof.
Absolutely. So you had your nice little network, I guess a Drexel Mafia over there.
Yes. It was, a network, a lowercase n network, because it's not like any of us had much going on, but we were trying, we were making stuff, and it was, what I liked about it is it did kind of remind me of how film school was, which was, except with a bit more stakes and despair because we were all just living in low rent apartments. But there was a lot of I would mix something in my room because I had like a very shitty setup in there that I was working with and would try to make do with. My buddy who lived upstairs, he was an editor, so he was editing music videos and other things, and a couple people were shooters. Our one roommate was a Steadicam op, she is in the union now as a Steadicam op, but at the time she had aspirations to be one. So there was just a lot going on, and it was cool to kind of just like walk up a flight of stairs and see what everybody was working on, or just to hang out and just sit, with a beer and just be like, man, this sucks. We need to find some work. Anyway, it was a good support system regardless.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It sounds like a great artistic commune.
Yeah.
Even though you had a little money saved by this point and a ton of roommates to offset some of your living expenses, did you have any other financial pressures to consider, like student loans?
Well, I will reveal something mildly embarrassing. I didn't have any student loans when I graduated. I know a lot of people who really had to, put the axe to the grinder in the first, 5 years out of college just to like get their head above water. And it's interesting because I don't necessarily feel like it made me really, really sympathetic to everyone who's in that position, because it was hard for me and some other my friends who were in a similar position, and we didn't have any student debt, right? And we were still struggling to make any money, and we didn't have, but thankfully, we didn't have the extra pressure of in certain circumstances, we didn't have the extra pressure of student loan payments just like hovering above our heads. So I was always very aware of my privilege.
It was definitely a tough time for anyone entering the labor market. I think when you were getting started in 2014 was really the first time people were saying in definitive terms that the economy had fully recovered from the Great Recession. But that weariness to hire was definitely still out there.
It was bad, dude. It was it's interesting because I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and I was like, it was hard to tell like what was going on, like specifically, and we were all kind of like kind of assumed that it was just like because of the 2008 collapse, like this was just like some sort of like aftershocks of what was going on there. So it was just like literally one of the worst times to roll up to anywhere and be like, hey, can I have a job? Because there's like, you're like, yeah, you and everybody else who, and because they saw you as just some kid out of college, they're like, fuck no, not giving it to him. So there was a lot of, I think there was a lot of like, I think it ended up being a lot of like, well, boys, I guess we're just on our own. So I guess we got to figure this out. Guess we got to, everybody just cram yourselves into one house in Queens and we'll all figure this out,
When the work finally started pouring in, what did that look like before you started your own business?
So before Dragonfly, I was doing a lot of production sound. I still do every now and then. I have my own gear that I've purchased and have kind of maintained since 2014. I was doing a lot of that. I joined the union after a while, so I was doing a lot of like union utility and boom operating. And then post was kind of a fill in the gaps, fill in the blank sort of position for me. That was like, when the production ebbs and flows as erratically as it does, post was just like the little tugboat that could. It's just always there, always just shows up right when you need it, and it gives you a little boost, and you can just go into your studio and get it done in like 4 or 5 hours and then go back to whatever it is that you need to do. And as the years went on, it felt like post was just slowly sort of like kind of just encroaching on production, and production was getting so erratic, and I was getting very dissatisfied with how erratic and how all over the place it was, and the stressors that it brought, because it was just like, it was nice to work on shows and work on bigger stuff, but it was just like, it felt like, especially in production, not necessarily in post. I guess maybe it feels this way because you can kind of you have a computer screen in front of you between the person that's yelling or being a dickhead about it. You know what I mean? So you're not like, you have some sort of like separation, so you can stay in your safe zone. But like in production, it always kind of felt like you were like, had to be very thankful for whatever showed up, even if it sucked, right? And it was just like, after a while, I just got kind of sick of it, because I was like, I know I should be happy that I got anything, because, getting anything is better than getting nothing, especially in this industry. But after a while, I was just like, I'm sick of it, man. I'm sick of just like feeling like I have to be excited to get exploited again just because somebody called me, And I mean, I could tell you so many stories about how I missed work because I had the audacity, Anthony, to go watch a movie and silence my phone. And then when I got out of the movie theater, they were like, "Oh, sorry, we called somebody else. You didn't pick up your phone." And you're like, why is my whole rent based off of like where I am at this very moment in time? I can't just be like sitting on a cell phone tower just with a big stupid smile on my face, just eagerly awaiting anyone who calls me, I don't want to do that. I started to get more into post just because it felt, regardless of
It's stable.
I mean, I would it's slightly more stable than production, but I think you felt like you were sort of the master of your own destiny a little bit more.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like you could take on a little bit more projects. You had a little bit more control over like moving stuff around in your schedule to be like, all right, well, if I can mix this thing for Google in the morning, if I can get it done by 11, then I can go grocery shopping because I need to get groceries. And then I can go fix my car because I got to get there's a nail in my tire and I got to go get that out. And then I can go, and then I might have enough time to go work out, and then I have to come back and do another mix. But if I can get this all done, then I will still have a life and still have made money. So it was nice. That was kind of the benefit that I saw out of it after a while, that it was just like, this just seems like more my speed, or at least I'll never not do production because, I mean, occasionally it rolls up and it's hard to say no to easy stuff. And it's nice to change it up and go back on set and talk to people because sometimes, like I said before, it's like a lonely lighthouse keeper up here and you get a little like, Smeagol. You're like, get away from me. Yeah. But
what's that, Precious? More room tone?
Yes, exactly. Oh, what? Another shitty scene to fix. Yes, of course, Precious. I'll fix it for you.
Precious!
So you found your sweet spot in post. When did you decide that it's not enough to just be pursuing this as an independent contractor, but you want to present yourself as a business and actually combine forces with your buddy from college, Ben Wong?
I think it was in 2018. He called me up, and we had talked about it we had started seriously talking about it at that point, but had thought maybe it was like several years away. And then he calls me, and he's like, okay, I have this movie. It's a rugby movie, and it's like a fairly big budget, and I'm assembling the dream team for this one because I really need it. They want me to be the supervising sound editor on it. And we had a big budget, and we had 3.5 weeks to do it. And so I worked with him in his studio and at Drexel's facility. They let us use some of it since we didn't have a lot still. And it took 3.5 weeks. We got that rugby movie done. And then we looked at each other and we were like, I think this movie sounds a lot better because we decided to like set our sort of egos aside and like work on it together as a group. And I think everything is elevated because of it. So then we were like, all right, well, maybe this does make sense now. Maybe this will get us more work if we combine our reels. Because by 2018, we had fairly respectable reels and fairly respectable stuff on our resume finally. So it did make sense at that point. And then about a year later, we got a website going. And then the work just started to flood in, and it hasn't really stopped since, even in the pandemic.
That's awesome. So you combined your reels and you made your website. How hard was it to do the clerical aspect of it? Was it pretty painless to start your own business?
It was actually not that. I didn't find it that difficult personally. My business partner found it a little difficult because he hadn't done it before. But I had my father has a couple of like LLCs for himself, and he told me about how to form an LLC, like a sole proprietorship, what to write off, how to structure it. I was really lucky that I had him because they didn't teach me any of that shit in film school at all. And I was like, when I finally did it, it was like night and day. I was like, oh shit, this is way better, man. It's it's still the same sort of, I guess to a certain extent, it is like tomato. If you just want to do it all yourself and have a big shoebox full of receipts and then chop everything up in terms of whatever. But it's just way less work when you have this sort of like LLC sort of structure in place. And I remember sitting there just thinking like, man, this is something I should have learned. I didn't need to watch some, it was nice to watch some art film from France, but I should have known what the hell an LLC was.
Yeah, you and me both. So how do you guys split up the work, the earnings? Are you working on everything together, or do you trade off? How does it go?
If the project's big enough, it's the two of us working on it, and we kind of have a meeting and split it up and that sort of thing. And obviously the line's always open for creative ideas. You'd be like, hey, I'm stuck on this, and can you help me with this? But when it comes to the finances, yeah, it's set up where there is one honeypot, and it all goes into there, and then we pay ourselves out like every 2 weeks. We have a bit of a set rate right now. I mean, in the future, we're trying to do some sort of W-2 setup where we don't have to worry about the taxes, or at least have them prepaid so we don't have to, have...
Save the money.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, I've been told that it doesn't save you that much money. It's just more work up front to save you work later.
Right.
But right now, that's what it is. It's sort of like a mix between a run-of-the-mill LLC and a sort of artist collective. That's how we like to run it, at least. We always joke that we like to keep it very communist around here. Everything's equal, everybody just brings in money, because the more money that we bring in, I mean, we have a sheet that says, because you have to divide it up a little bit, especially if people want to buy gear and upgrade stuff and buy computers and stuff like that. You do have to have a sheet that says like, well, this month you only made X amount of money, so it doesn't look like you have the budget for that, but I can help you out, or I've made more. And I say that in the beginning because the last 6 months, Ben has just lapped me in terms of money. He's doing really well. And it's mutually beneficial to both parties involved that the other one does well. So it's the way it's set up. Like I said, as we joke, we call each other comrades sometimes because it feels like very hammer and sickle. But I think it helps. I think it helps because there's like a pitfall. I'm sure you're aware of this. There's a pitfall that happens when you start a business with a good friend.
Yes.
Because you don't know how it's going to go. And I think he and I were super aware of that when we started this, because we were like, we wanted this to further our business, but we want to be friends first, business partners second. So we tried to set the company up in a way that was more sort of like
friendly to that.
Yeah, friendly to that idea, and just very much sort of a means to an end in a weird way, where it's like nobody's like, we're not in the rat race with each other. This is a collective in a way to kind of help each other out. I guess in a weird callback, like the House in Queens or something like that. It's just the collective and the community is far more important than who's doing better or worse. Because if everybody's doing well, then
you'll rise up together.
Exactly. I think the community is quite paramount to most things, honestly. Because if you don't have a strong community to bounce ideas off of, or move work around, or have different types of perspectives, it just becomes very stale, and people get bitter, and it just doesn't it's not fun anymore. Nobody's enjoying themselves, and the work suffers because of it. So it's so important to, if you can't find one, make one, but it's so important to like move to a place where you can foster that sense of community, and that'll enrich all parts of your life.
Amen to that. So you've made one, Dragonfly Audio Post, and you guys are in the business of telling stories through sound. Are the nuances the same across mediums, be it commercial spots or feature films?
That's a good question. Honestly, the core tenets all remain the same. Is like you watch the piece and you see what is it trying to do, or sometimes you do. Sometimes I look at it and go, what does this piece want? Like what is it telling me it wants to do? Like how is it edited? Is there's a VO on it? Is it low key? Is it exciting? What is the ultimate sort of goal of this piece? If you just want to take it in like super broad terms. And then you kind of roll up with your ideas from that vantage point. Like if it's a car commercial, right? Like that it's going to be like quick, fast cuts, cars zipping around corners, gears shifting. You want people's hearts racing, right? So you like, okay, the idea is you want people to get excited. So then you come at it through that way. And then when it comes to other stuff, it's just about a point of view, honestly, is I think the big thing that I always do, which is look at the scene that I'm watching or the commercial or documentary. What point of view is this from? And what are they trying to feel, or what is their goals, and what are they trying to achieve? So I try to find my way in through character, basically, and see, like, in this scene, why, there's another example. We were working on this movie this past year we're trying to mix it and finalize it this month, but there's a really lovely scene in the bar where this character goes back to their hometown and meets this woman that they haven't spoken to in a long time, and they kind of rekindle a romance. And we kind of decided to. It was very obvious that, in the scene they do this shot where they like show the band playing, and then they pan across the big bar that's fairly crowded, and then they kind of zero in on these two characters and their dialogue, and with sound, you realize in that moment, you're like, nobody cares what's happening behind them at the bar.
Right.
This is all about them.
Yep.
Right? So you pull everything away. You want to focus your attention on them. So you sit there and you go like, okay, we're going to pull this back. We're going to pull up all of the movement on the table. They're moving stuff on the table. Maybe you want to hear like, you still want to hear the music a little bit because that sounds kind of nice. But you're all looking at the scene and see like, what is the point of view that we're coming from, and how can we use sound to kind of get the themes or points across that the filmmaker wants to get across on a scene-to-scene basis. And sometimes you have to look at it from like a big arc, a big 90-minute arc, but the first way you get in is just from a point of view, and that really helps. I don't know about other people, that really helps me a lot.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I think you hit the nail on the head. Everything that appears in the mise en scène is in the service of story. And that story can be selling a product or the telling of a plot. In any case, sound design is integral to that process, and I think that's really cool. I was wondering if you had any particular sounds that come to mind that you're particularly proud of in how they elevate the story.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. There's two sounds that come to mind, and one I think is easy to speak on, and one that's not, but I'll do my best. I have this, this one is less like, the first one is less like something I've like intensely manipulated, and more like a particular instrument that I bought that it works super well when sent through specific effects for specific types of movies. It's by this company called Asm Bells, and it's just this guy in Italy in his garage that makes these like resonating boxes that have like metal rods sticking out of them. And basically you take like a mallet or a cello bow or something of that nature, and then you bow it, and it just makes the most terrifying noises that you can imagine. Super scary, great for like horror stuff. And I bowed it. It has this piece of wood sticking out of it that's like everything kind of hits a certain pitch. There's a cymbal on it for higher stuff, and then smaller rods for like middle tones. And then there's this piece of wood sticking out the side that's like really low, like grumbly tone. and I bowed it one time, and I heard this like really. I had it through like the biggest reverb that I had on my computer, and I bowed it, and it had this just weird sort of feedback, sort of like, it sounded really low, but it just had this interesting sort of like low end sort of harmonic quality to it that just like gave me goosebumps, and I was like, oh, what was that? What was that sound that it just made? I didn't even know what I did. So I stopped everything and I cut that sound out of the recording and immediately threw it into a folder that was like Azimbel's Dope Sounds folder. And I have used that particular bowed sound on almost anything I can get away with because I just think it sounds so damn awesome. The second one was the film called Goodbye Honey, where it was about a woman who had escaped a sort of a serial killer and had met another truck driver, and they were stuck in the woods while they were trying to escape from this killer. And it was there was a particular shot that where she's standing in front of the truck at a long distance, and you can't really see like who it is, and then the truck driver turns on the high beam so she could see. And so I was trying to come, because it was like and they cut around it, so it was just like a big, looked like a huge stadium light had come on. And now I know that high beams or cars' lights turning on don't necessarily make a sound at all. They just go whoop and they're on.
But dramatically speaking,
yes, but we're in movie land. We have the drama. We need to fill it with drama. So we have to figure out what is the coolest, interesting thing you could do here. So I had this like, I found these recordings of these like metal sort of doors and levers opening, like a like that, and then I kind of compressed them and sort of kind of cut off any sort of reverb tail they had, so it was just like a big ka-chunk, and then it stopped. And then I was trying to figure out what to do for the like high beam sort of light sound that was blinding her. And I found this, I don't even know, man, I wish I could tell you like where it was or like what particular, this is sort of the reason why I like doing things like this, is because I was like, I thought maybe what would be cool is some sort of PA feedback, because I didn't want to use just like a little tone, like a beep. I wanted to like find some sort of feedback sound and manipulate that, because feedback moves around depending on where the microphone is, and it could sound kind of interesting. So I had this like sort of array of like guitar pedals that I put it through, and then there was at the very end of the sort of like feedback thing, I guess in the sound, in the particular recording, they turned off the PA, and then there was just this like sort of white noise hum that was going on for like maybe 4 seconds before the particular recording ended. And the way I had all the pedals set up, when it turned on, it just went like, and I was like, whoa, what the fuck is that? Holy shit. And then I stopped it and I plucked it out, and then I like put a tone, and then I grabbed it like a tone and put it under that for the lights, and like kind of repeated it over several seconds.
I'm going to interrupt Rich here for a second just so you can hear the sound he's referring to. Here it is now. Pretty cool, right? Back to Rich.
And I was like, whoa, that sounds cool as shit. And it's one of these things where like no one will ever know what that is, but for whatever reason it just felt right. It felt very dramatic and very like, like very,
it just works.
Yeah, well, it works. It feels, your character's supposed to feel very like in danger and under the spotlight, I guess you could say. So you have to kind of find a way to kind of make it feel that way to the audience. And but part of the magic of it is sometimes I wish I could tell you why it worked, but when I popped it in there, I just felt like it did. And thankfully, so did our directors. They loved it and they kept it. And I became, and then again, when I heard that, I was like, I do not know if I could make that again, even if I tried. So I'm going to save it. I'm going to put it in a folder somewhere just in case I need to use it again, because sometimes these things just kind of pop out and you have to be ready to snag them. And then you have to be ready to put them in your little basket, your little like apple baskets, so you can use them later, because if anybody asks you to do them again, you're like, bro, I have no idea. I was just a mad scientist, like cooking up stuff in the lab. I don't know what happened. It just came out, and I thought it sounded cool. Is about like 70% of the battle for me.
Yeah, that makes total sense. It's smart that you future-proof your work like that, so you're not spinning your wheels later. And speaking of looking ahead to the future, at what point in your career did it hit you that you should start saving for retirement?
Yeah. I felt like it didn't really dawn on me that was, well, you always know in the back of your mind that it's important, but I think it really kind of hit me when I was, I think maybe 20, I want to say maybe 2017 was kind of a crossroads for me. When I was, oh God, how old was I? Maybe like 28, maybe? I could be wrong. I'm 32 now, so I don't remember. My math is bad. That's why I work in film. I don't have to add numbers together. But let's say I was around 27, 28. I started to realize that I was like, oh man, like, you know, I've managed this far to like get on my feet and like be able to like, I could, in 2017 was like that, and into 2018 was like sort of the first year where I was like, oh, like I actually have a little bit of money I can like put aside. I can actually like, it wasn't a lot, but I actually had some excess finally after all these years of just, you know, just kind of skimping by. And I realized, I looked at how old I was and like some of my other friends who had sort of more, who had jobs.
Corporate jobs.
Yeah. And I was like, oh shit, like I am way behind. And I don't really know like exactly how to make up the difference. Especially, I mean, now I will say this, when I joined the union, it helped quite a bit because they start setting aside stuff for you. It's part of the nice, one of the great benefits of joining a union is they get all of this stuff is taken care of for you. Medical, they set aside some medical money, they set aside retirement, some stuff to invest. It's join the union, folks. It's great. It may be a little expensive for some, but when you can do it, definitely do it. It helps. But I feel like I'm still playing catch up because a lot of it is like, do I buy a house or do I not retire? You know, or retire? Like it's, you know, because of what I feel like, because of what has happened in our economy recently, our generation especially doesn't have the luxury of deciding, or it doesn't have the luxury of
Assuming.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. It doesn't have the luxury of assuming that both will be around for you.
Right.
And you have to, like, especially in a creative endeavor that is in an interesting spot like film is, which is creative and commerce all wrapped into one, you got to make a decision. And that involves, I think moving to Austin was a good choice in the long run. Well, now it's really expensive, but at the time it was still, you know, because I looked around and I was like, oh, you know, maybe in a year I could actually afford a house because the houses out here are not that expensive. And maybe I could finally get into that game and try to see if I could get just something basic, anything to get me
Build
started.
some equity.
Exactly. Now it's impossible because now everything's skyrocketed. But at the time, like I just felt like I was at an intense crossroads where I wasn't really sure. Now, thankfully, my wife is a nurse and she has retirement built up because she was a film. She was working in film and then she transferred over to be a nurse, and that also helped. It was nice to have someone around the house who had a normal job with normal benefits. But now with the sort of business setup that we have, now it's actually not that difficult. And now there's quite a bit. I just started a Fidelity account for myself, an IRA, which is something I also had to figure out. You have to kind of just, look at your finances and look at what's going on and just time it right, because a lot of it comes down to that, especially in freelance, because I'm sure anyone, yourself and anyone else who's listening to this that's a freelancer knows, spending your money and receiving the money has to all be timed perfectly.
Oh, yeah.
For all this to work. And if it doesn't, the whole house of cards comes collapsing in on itself. That's all of our lives, which is effectively, I think, another reason for this business was just to be like, let's see if we can put a couple of braces up on this house of cards. You know what I mean? So it doesn't fall apart so easily. Because we know that film is very unreliable, but at least we have each other. Then we can prop this house of cards up for like 2 more months before something shows up.
Emergency funds and reliable teammates. That's what it's all about. And speaking of the team, you're in Austin at the moment and Ben's in Philadelphia. What about your clients? Where are they from?
So the feature ones are usually local. I would say like 85% of the time. They're either a Philly tri-state area, maybe New Jersey or New York, or somewhere in Texas is where they're shot at. The commercials and the corporates, on the other hand, they're here, there, and everywhere. I think we're fast approaching a world where it truly doesn't matter where the hell you live, and it's just can you do the work, and can you do it well, and can you work well with us? I think a lot of people our age are totally fine with working remotely and speaking over Zoom and have this sort of understand the rhythms of conversation that happen over the internet much better than some of the older crowd. So I see that some people who are my age or younger tend to not be like, oh yeah, I'll send it to you. We'll just email, and then I'll show up one day and then we'll mix it and we'll sort it out. And some of the older crowd, they like to be in person. I don't think any way is better or worse, but I do like the idea that it'll be the ultimate democratization of post work, because I think that's the best part about being in post, is that it used to matter, but now I don't think it does. And I'm hoping we're fast approaching something where you could live in fucking Kansas or like in the mountains of Montana. As long as you got good internet, they don't care, And that's in my opinion, that's a great world to live in. And that would be something I would like.
Me too, especially for kids just getting started out. I really think that's the way to democratize the process. So much of it right now favors people with generational wealth who can afford to move to expensive cities and take low-paying entry-level jobs.
Oh, yeah. And that actually kind of dovetails, I think, into one of your questions, which is the pay your dues question. I think that is a load of horse shit, to be honest with you. And I guess you have to... I guess in a certain sense you have to the tough experiences teach you something, right? And you can definitely kind of learn a lot from a bad experience, almost maybe more than a good experience in some cases. But there's so much bullshit, like sort of fraternity level hazing stuff, and sort of like, oh, you gotta like some sort of rite of passage that happens that is just like, you're like, oh yeah, like I remember talking to somebody about this the other day, and being like, oh, we gotta you gotta show them that it's hard out there, and you're like, bro, I think they know it's hard out there. I don't think they need to be reminded that. That's just, I don't know.
It's being a bully for no reason.
Exactly.
Well, Rich, we're coming to the end of our broadcast. Where can we follow along on social media for you and Dragonfly?
Personal one is Rich Hamilton 89 on Instagram, and then Dragonfly Audio Post on Instagram is the business one, and that has all of our work and links to some of the music and the website and everything like that. So that's usually where you can find us.
Awesome. Well, I'll make sure to link that in the description. But Rich, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure.
Beautiful. Thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
And that's our show. Thank you so much, Rich Hamilton, again for joining us for the second episode of the Save Your Dues podcast, a financial podcast about sustainably making it in and out of Hollywood. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. Until next time, I'm Anthony Moormeal. Take care.